Hello, this is Elaine Sugar, award-winning children's program facilitator and overall supporter of children's dreams. Welcome to the Empower Teen Self-Esteem podcast. We bring you ideas and resources that help teens shine and help ease parents' minds. I am Elaine Sugar, and I want to welcome everyone to this very special episode of Empower Teen Self-Esteem. And I say it's a special episode because I have someone who is near and dear to my heart with us today. This gentleman was once is still the inventor, but of a toy that was once the number one selling toy in the world. So, if you all remember the Pound Puppy, and to any of my teenagers who are not old enough to remember what a Pound Puppy is, then I want you to go on the internet and do a search, and you will see the most adorable little puppies. You are going to hear the story about how he invented that. You're also going to hear about some life lessons that our teenagers can use as they choose their paths in life. So I am going to welcome formally Mike. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here.
It is a pleasure to me. So, first tell us, how in the world did you come up with the idea to create such a lovable, widely embraced toy?
Well, I worked in a factory for 18 years. I went straight out of high school into a factory, a Ford factory, transmission factory, and they were a great company to work for. But the first 7 years, I was on an assembly line. So I had a lot of free time to think.
Uh huh.
And I was always thinking of ideas, of, of, of ways to create things because I wanted to get out of the factory. I didn't want to work in the factory. I worked there because it was a good job and it was good pay. But one of the unique things that I found and that a lot of people do is they get an idea and then they think of all the reasons why it's not possible to do. And that was my case back then. But in December of 1983, I had purchased a little doll for my daughter for Christmas, and she loved it, took it everywhere with it, and she was just so madly in love with it. And I thought, well, how can an inanimate object have that much emotional appeal? And I thought, well, if there's two things people love in this life, it's their kids and their pets.
Yeah,
And some people treat their pets like they're their kids.
absolutely. Some better.
Yes. And when I was growing up, my mom would take me to the pound when it was politically correct to call it the pound. They call
Mm-hmm.
them shelters nowadays,
Yeah.
to pick out a puppy. And I thought, well, everybody loves a puppy, even if they don't love a dog. And so I got the idea I'm going to make these stuffed puppies, and they're going to come in a box like they're in the pound. And the child will pick the one out that they want and bring it home and name it, and they'll have the personal ownership with it. And that was the impetus of the idea. And I would not let go of that idea, Elaine. And it push came to shove, and I had to quit my job at Ford to continue trying to make Pound Puppies succeed. And I went through a lot of rejection from companies that did not like my idea. And then finally, I found a company that liked it. They introduced it in the United States, and we were the number one new toy in 1985. And then we were the number one toy in the world in 1986 and 87,
That's
as
fantastic.
spread around to 56 countries around the world.
That is amazing. And even though I already know the story, I'm just still amazed. That's just fantastic. So, you mentioned two things while you were sharing that experience with us that I wanted to ask you some more specific questions about because I think there are some lessons in those moments that can be shared with teens today. So, at the beginning, you talked about the fact that when you had ideas, and a lot of times when we have ideas, we start to think of all the reasons why we should not do it, why we shouldn't create it. So How do you have those conversations with yourself, and how do you win those battles with yourself? And then later in the story, you talked about going to a lot of people who didn't like the idea. So, two questions. How do you have that conversation or get past that conversation with yourself when you have an idea and then all these reasons of no come, and then you talk to other people and they reject the idea? So how do you deal with those two situations?
You know, Elaine, that's an extremely important question for our teens to understand. Is that I remember the moment that I got the idea for Pound Puppies. I was to me.
I'm sorry, Mike, I just lost your sound for 1 minute, and this is so important. I want to make sure. Can you just start to answer that question again for me?
Uh, it's a very important question, and I remember the moment that I got the idea for Pound Puppies, and I was in my car riding along. I remember where I was in Middletown, Ohio, and I remember pounding my fist on the steering wheel and saying, "This is it. This is right. This is the right thing for me." And I took off with it, Elaine, and I would not let anything get in my way of achieving my goal. Even with the rejections, I was so determined that I said, well, if everybody turns me down, I'm going to manufacture and distribute it myself. I may start out slow, just like Cabbage Patch was. You know, originally they had handmade Cabbage Patches that were sold, and I thought, well, you know what? I'll do handmade Pound Puppies and put them in a special box, and I'll do that if I have to. I was determined to not let anybody steal my dream,
Awesome.
and I just pursued it continually until it happened. And that's the key with so many people. You know, I talk to groups a lot of time, and I ask them a question. And I mean, I've talked to high schoolers, teenagers too. And I say, how many in this room have ever had a great idea where you're just doing something and maybe you say, you know, if we made this cup differently, it would be better. And it's amazing, Elaine. Everybody raises their hand in the room that said they've had a great idea at one time or another.
Mm-hmm.
Then I ask the question, how many of you have pursued it? 99% of the time, every hand goes down in the room. And that's the key. You've got to pursue your dreams when you have them and not let that old negativity slip into your brain that tells you, which I had for years, oh, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do that. I don't have the money. I don't, you know, all those different types of things. And I had to overcome all those obstacles in getting Pound Puppies into the play, into the marketplace.
Well, it definitely paid off for you, so that is fantastic. And I remember you telling me this story before, and when you say you had to choose between continuing to stay at the factory and pursuing your dream of, moving forward with the Pound Puppies, and you said your manager asked you to choose between the puppy or your job at the factory, and you told me, you said, well, I choose the puppies. I
Well, you
love
know,
that.
I know, and it was a big step for me, a big scary step for me because I gave up a good job, 18 years seniority,
Hmm.
good pay, good benefits. My youngest daughter has cerebral palsy. I had no medical benefits, and I walked away from Ford. But I said to myself, success, I'll be able to do more for my daughter who has
Wow.
those issues throughout her whole life. And I thought, you know, I was just so determined. There was no thought that it wouldn't work for me. And I just kept going through every step to find a way.
So that's really powerful, because I teach children affirmations and the power of positive thinking. I listen to you tell that story. I listen to a lot of celebrities, a lot of people who've achieved really high heights in life. And I notice they say that. I just believed in this. So I definitely want our teens to pick up on that and remember that he had all of these challenges, but he said he continued to believe that it could be done. So you definitely have to believe in yourself. It's just very important. Very important.
And another point I want to make I don't have a college education. I did not graduate from college. And I found it interesting through these years. I meet a lot of very, very successful people
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of very, very successful people that didn't graduate from college. Now, they did graduate from high school and they had the good basic tools. I know a guy that didn't graduate from high school. He went out, he became a salesman. Then he ended up selling medical supplies. Then he
Mm-hmm.
started his own company selling medical supplies. And then he sold it for multi-million dollars to a bigger company that wanted it after he had built it for years. And that was hard work. So I want the teenagers out there to understand is great if that's what you want and that's part of your dream and that's how you find your dream. It's not absolutely necessary to be successful. And you know what? If you want a pizza restaurant, that's your dream
Mm-hmm.
for it, get your pizza restaurant and it can be tremendously successful because it's your passion. And, but if you're somebody that says, then, you know what? I am so good at what I have in my product and my concept here, I'm going to start franchising it. Then you become the Domino's guy
Yeah.
who wants many, many. But if you want one, that's fine. That's your dream. You're happy. You're living good. And that's the key. So there is for every person that's listening to this, they have a dream,
Mm-hmm.
all of it. Follow that dream and understand that it's there's going to be problems. When I first started, developing Pound Puppies and getting out there and showing it to companies and getting rejected and everything, I ran into a lot of problems and a lot of challenges and everything. And in my mind, I envisioned myself as the little wind up car. You wind it up and you let it go, and it'll hit the wall and bounce over and go the opposite direction. It'll hit the wall and go this way, that way. You can't stop it. That's the way I imagined myself as that little car. When I'd run into a problem, I'd just bounce off and go the other way and figure out a way to get around it. And some of my biggest satisfactions in life was solving the problems and getting on to the next step. And any one of our kids out there that have a dream, they can do that too. They absolutely can.
Absolutely. I love that. That is very, very important that we remember that. And I say it all the time. Believe you can do it and go do it. It may not be easy, no one's saying that. And I know you said you went through a lot of different no's and rejection and it was hard work, but you stuck with it and you learned as you went along. So I do want to reemphasize to our young people that we're not saying just say you're going to do it. You put in work. Do you want to talk about some of the research, some of the experiences you gained to make sure that you could make your dream come true?
Absolutely. And I remember the first thing that I did, very first thing that I did when I got an idea for Pound Puppies, was I went to an intellectual property attorney.
Mm,
It was one of the best things I ever did because I didn't understand anything in the intellectual properties, the trademarks, all these different types of things. And I went into his office and I sat down with him and I said, "Here's my idea. I'm going to make these dogs. I'm going to put them in boxes. I'm going to call them Pound Puppies, and
mm-hmm.
I'm license or sell the rights to a toy company." I didn't know the difference at that time. And he paused and looked across the desk at me and he says, "You can't own an idea." And I went, "Oh, what do you mean?" And he says, "You can own trademarks, copyrights, patents. And once you own those things, then they belong to you. And then you can go out and you can sell or offer them to somebody that would like to do what you have here." And so I had to flip into a totally different mode and I had to go and create the puppies, file my copyrights, file for my trademarks, and get all of these things that I owned. And then once I owned them, then I started showing them to toy companies saying, "Wouldn't you like to sell this toy? It's a great toy idea." And the whole reason I'm saying that is that you can take step by step by step and you can find what's the next second step should be, what the third step should be, and all of it. And
Yes.
the thing we have nowadays that I didn't have in 1984?
The internet.
You're right. The internet. And the internet gives you worldwide reach. But more importantly, when I get an idea right now for a new toy, we go in and we Google search this concept. And you'd be surprised how many times my ideas pop up where somebody's already done it and it was done 7 years ago. Somebody else owns this and knows it. It pops up in the
Mm-hmm.
search. Well, then I know not to spend my time on it. And so
Yes.
the internet is a huge tool. Teenagers are 100 times more smart than me when it comes to computers and how they work and all the
Mm-hmm.
things they do with them. And so the internet is a huge tool for helping our teenagers today. You're reaching out all around the world right now, and couldn't do that back in 1984.
Yeah, it's a very powerful. So I just want to make sure that our parents listening and our teens are hearing what's being conveyed properly. So what we're saying is definitely get your high school education. But once it's time to go beyond that, not everyone is going to college. You can pursue other paths. There are a lot of people that are going to college, and we applaud that. We love that. We encourage it. We're just saying if you choose to get your education and your experience another way, then we applaud that as well. But just know that when Mike went after his idea, he started connecting with people that were knowledgeable and he was learning from them, and then he learned and he did and still does research on his own. So whether or not you're doing your learning in a institution like a college or a trades school, or you're doing it by going through life and meeting with people, reading, you're still getting further education. So, whatever your dream is, build the foundation for that in high school, in school. And then when you graduate beyond that, you need to build your foundation and go from there. So, definitely do not feel like, oh, I didn't make it into college or I'm not college material and that's the end of the world. It absolutely is not. Find your path, find your way. Either way, we're saying you're going to have to educate yourself. You're going to have to learn how to pursue the passion that you have. Whatever your dream is, educate yourself either way.
That you said that so eloquently. That is 100% true. That's what they need to do.
Absolutely. So, do you have any tales from your teen years? I won't pressure you. We all live and learn.
You know what? And you know what? That's a very good thing to say. We all live and learn. I have many fond memories of my teen years, and I have many memories of when I didn't do things I should be doing, and and I didn't study as hard as I should have in school,
Mm-hmm.
and I hung out with the wrong people and got into trouble. But luckily, I got through that, and I went on,
Good
and
for you.
it's so important to get your high school education. You know, my nephew, he contacted me about 10 years ago, or his mother did, and said he wants to drop out of high school. I don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I called him up. He's my namesake, Michael. I called him up. I said, Michael, you want to drop out of high school? And he was like a junior in high school. He said, yeah. He said, they say a high school diploma isn't worth anything nowadays. And I said, well, then if that's true, then if you don't have one, you're even lower than the person that
Wow.
have one. And he said, you know what? I never thought of it that way. And he went on and got his high school diploma, and he's succeeded. So I
Thank
want
you.
to understand it is very, very important to get that high school diploma.
Absolutely agree 100%. So, what types of things do you have going on now? We know that you continued after Pound Puppies, and I know I didn't realize it had gone on to be a cartoon. A cartoon.
Yes, we had a cartoon show, and how that started was I took two handmade Pound Puppies and I sent them to Hanna Barbera because I grew up with Hanna Barbera cartoons, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and they were the only people I knew in Hollywood as it related to cartoon shows. And I sent them two handmade Pound Puppies with a letter. This was before Pound Puppies was in the market and successful. And I said, "This is my idea. I own the trademarks and stuff to this. And I think it would make a great cartoon show." And Joe Barbera called me and said he loved the idea and wanted me to come to Hollywood. Now, I want to explain something for the kids to hear this clearly. That was not, quote, the proper way to approach Hollywood.
Okay.
Sending a couple of handmade piece and a handwritten letter to them. And when I talk to people in Hollywood about that story, they're flabbergasted that I did it that way and that Joe Barbera responded to me and that he loved the concept. So I want kids to know, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to talk to anybody, and don't be afraid to approach people in the process. You know what I found out, Elaine? It's just like me today. I love sharing information with teenagers. I love doing what I'm doing today.
Wonderful.
And when a teenager walks up to me and asks me a question, I love giving them an answer. Because do you know what, Elaine? Even at my age of 34, when I invented Pound Puppies, I had to ask a lot of questions from a lot of people. And I had hired this consultant agent, Bob Steiner. His family started the Kenner Toy Company.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me something once. He said, "Do you know why you will always be successful, Mike? Is because you're not afraid to ask a question or say, 'I don't know.'" When you're in a meeting, in a toy meeting, a lot of times they would use words and say things, and I would stop them and say, "I don't understand what that means." And Bob said, most people won't do that.
Hmm.
They're afraid that they'll look like they don't know a lot.
Right.
But with me, I was like a sponge, learning everywhere I went and every experience I had.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it's no. Don't be afraid to ask the questions. The people that have the knowledge kind of like to give you the answer if they have the knowledge. They don't mind sharing it with you. So that's important.
That is another wonderful piece of advice, because I think sometimes we get so self-conscious about, you know, they're going to know that I don't know if I ask a question. A lot of times when you're going to meet with someone, you're going to meet with them because they are the more knowledgeable source. So they expect to share. You know, in the toy industry, they knew they were the experts. When young people go to job interviews or they go in different situations, a lot of times the people who you're meeting with are expected to have more knowledge. So they're not going to be surprised if you don't know. They may not know the particular things that you do and don't know. And Mike just told you, when teens ask him, he loves to answer. So you can end up denying yourself the chance to learn and move forward and be more informed, all because your mind kind of plays tricks on you. Just push past that, ask your question, and go ahead and continue to grow. And honestly, if you're sincerely asking a question and you're doing your part to learn and understand, if it's somebody that does not want to answer that question for you, that's probably not the right person to be connected with anyway.
Right. I got a feeling they don't have know the right answer to share with you.
Well,
So
that's a
that's why
good point.
they're not. Let me make one more point
Absolutely.
for the teenagers to understand out there. When I got the idea for Pound Puppies, I knew nothing about the business. I knew no one in the business. I didn't even know how I should approach. I got the advice from the attorney at the start about protecting it. But I went from that stage to a number one toy in the world. And I knew nothing about the business. After 4 years of traveling around, licensing, meeting all these extremely knowledgeable people in the toy business, and asking the questions and being a sponge and soaking it up. 4 years, I, I became an expert in the toy business when I knew nothing about it 4 years earlier. It was almost like going to college for 4 years and taking lessons every single day during that 4 year time span. And so that's important for youth of today to understand. You can do that.
And you know what I like about that? You said you were going around talking to all these different people, you were learning, but you were being a sponge, meaning you were absorbing. So that means you had to be listening. So I know sometimes some of the meetings, some of the places we go, especially as young people, it might not be the most entertaining or engaging. It might be more interesting to be on your phone, playing a video game. But when you are pursuing your dream, you need to become a sponge. And you know, when you put a sponge in water, it soaks it up. So at those times, you're going to have to resist the temptation to text, to make those phone calls, to play the video games, and you are actually in learning mode. So remember, we said even if you don't go to college or a formal school, you're still going to have to receive information and you want to be able to retain it. So I think that's really important that we touch on that. There was no formal school, but as he's going around meeting all these people, he's listening, he's attentively listening, he's asking questions to get even further understanding. So that's a informal college, I think. How to make a toy.
Yes, it is. I'd like to add one more thing
Mm-hmm.
for, and I heard this many years ago. It was not me, but I don't remember where I heard it. It was during my process of becoming positive in everything that I approached. It's called Gigo. It's Gigo,
Mm-hmm.
and write if you write Gigo down, means is if you put good into your brain, out of your brain and your actions and your success and all of that. But if you put garbage into your brain, then garbage comes out and it becomes your life. So always look at what you're doing and what you're putting into your brain, and always do gigu from the good in, good outside, and you will succeed.
I love that. I love that. I think that is an excellent way to wrap this up. But before we wrap up, I just want to give you an opportunity to talk about anything that you want to make the public aware of and anything that you want them to do. Look at a website, go anywhere on the internet, anything that you want to ask us to do in exchange for the knowledge and the wisdom that you shared today.
I really, what I do is I'm an independent inventor and I license it. I don't actually sell the toys.
Mm-hmm.
I license them to a toy company and they manufacture, distribute, and sell. I would like to say that Pound Puppies is out again, and it came out this last year, and it came out in the classic, which was my idea to bring it back as just exactly as it was in 1984, because the mothers of today were the kids that owned it,
Mm-hmm.
and the grandmothers of today were the mothers that bought them for their kids back then, and they want to get them for their grandchildren now. So just want you to know, Pound Puppies is out there in the marketplace today, and I'm working on new toy ideas right now. I've got some new
Awesome.
inventions I'm developing, and I hope the kids will be seeing those in the next few years too.
Well, that is fantastic. And when I started out this episode, I said this is a special interview. So I'm just going to take a moment and let you all know with all that Mike has achieved, all of his accomplishments. I mean, he's been all around the world, met presidents, Oprah Winfrey, all these different celebrities, gets to travel the world. He is one of the most generous people, the kindest people. My father was fortunate to work with him, and it was just a dream come true for my father. So I cannot exit this interview without letting you all know that through all of his successes and fame, my father was just someone that took care of the wildlife and the property that Mike once owned. And so somebody could have looked at this and say, here you have this wealthy man and you have this worker. And so what would they have in common? How would that person who has all this wealth and fame, treat this worker? And I will tell you, he treated him beautifully, and he still continues, even though my father passed away years ago, to be a wonderful support to me. So I would say to our young people that when you get your success and you go out and you build your dreams, give back. I'm able to call him for advice and direction. A lot of times I'll have a thought and Mike, I just want you to get me started. This is the road I want to go down. What do you think I should do? So I would say as you go out and you get yours, use Mike as an example and be one of those people that's willing to share. And one day when you have an opportunity to talk to some teens, take the time to answer their questions and encourage them. So, Mike, I call you a lot. If I don't say thank you enough, you mean the world to me, and I want to say thank you.
I appreciate that. And I do want to say that your father is one of the, if not the number one finest men that I ever knew in my lifetime. And he had a great soul, and I loved him.
Yeah, yeah, and you treated him so. You treated him so, and you've extended that to us. And I was very fortunate to know that man. Beautiful man, special man. I wrote something recently on the internet. I said, if you knew him, you loved him, and you respected him.
Absolutely, 100%.
Well, thank you so much, Mike. There's so many other places that you could have been, but you spent this time with me and you have enlightened me as well as others. So you're continuing to be the wonderful person that I've always known you to be. So thank you so much. And to our listening audience, I want you to know that I appreciate you spending time with us. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Empower Teen Self-Esteem. Let's keep doing that. They need it and they deserve it. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Empower Teen Self-Esteem. Please follow Kids More Sugar on social media. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel to show that you support this content. And you can visit our website at kidsmoresugar.com to learn more about our free online kids program. Thank you.